Hey, it's LA Lloyd, and today we welcome back to the Rock 30. In the past, we've had Jake from Autumn Kings on Zoom, but here we are in Come and Take It Live in Austin, Texas, and we get to see each other face to face. So finally, great to meet you in person, man.
Great to meet you. I didn't know you were that jacked from the Zoom interviews that we did before. I don't know what the secret is, but I'm going to have to ask you later.
They were great, man. Well, I want to kind of go back to the beginning before we get up to Gone, 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 kind of take our listeners on a little trip today, if you will.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about AC/DC. First concert with your dad, first time you ever smelled weed.
Yes.
So let's talk about that experience and what really kind of turned you on to music.
Well, I think one of the things AC/DC did better than almost any rock band is they had the combo of catchy musical songs and they had the aesthetic to go with it. So that was just that extra driver, especially when you're 12 years old and impressionable. Seeing the show, how it all came together paired with the music, left a real imprint on me. And seeing the fact that those guys, at that time, they must have still been, Brian Johnson was over 60 years old.
Right.
And he was still cool. And I thought, wow, I don't know too many guys that old that are like the man still. They're commanding 20,000 plus people in arenas doing rock and roll. I was just mesmerized by the whole experience, from the highway trip from Canada over into the US to getting Subway before the show to getting over and, Dad, what's that smell? Listen, if you do that, I'm going to kill you. So I still did it a few times, but not too many, Dad, if you're watching. And I just love the overall experience that AC/DC brought.
And how cool is it that they're still touring in 2026,
That's how you know it's in their blood.
Yeah.
I think there are people that think they want to do music for life, and then there are those who it doesn't matter. They're just going to keep doing it. You've got the Paul McCartneys, the AC/DCs. I was actually just talking with Joe the other day about Ed Sheeran even being maybe the biggest pop star on the planet, or among the top 10, you could say.
Right.
But he's the kind of guy that even if he lost all of the success and money, he would still be busking on the streets making music. And I think that's the kind of mentality it takes to succeed and survive. Kind of like what you did in radio, man. It's like not an easy road for sure.
Indeed. And then, of course, it was Guitar Hero 3. You became really great at that. And, you eventually picked up the real guitar. But was it really that kind of, there was a moment that you said, I need to put this one down and pick up a real one?
Yeah, there really was. What's great is I come from a big, on my dad's side, Lebanese family. So we have massive cousin gatherings. And this must have been late 2007, early 2008, when all my cousins were playing Guitar Hero. And I didn't know what this game was. But, FOMO, you want to join in. And I thought everyone was doing okay. I got to learn how to do this thing.
Right.
And what happened when I was 12 years old, I was sort of a little bit of a geek, still am to a degree, and not very great socially. I had a small group of friends. I wasn't great with talking to girls, let's say. And when you get to that, early teenage phase, you sort of have this pent-up angst just about life or whatever it is. And I don't think at the time I thought it was that deep, but I felt it. And I channeled all of that feeling like an outcast into that video game, as funny as it sounds. So I'd play from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night, obsessing over it, to the point where I was playing Before I Forget by Slipknot backwards. I'd memorized the 5 buttons. Can you believe how lame this is? And Bulls on Parade by Rage. And next year, I started playing Rock Band and learned the drums on Rock Band.
Okay.
And finally, it was actually the drums that I wanted to learn first. For my 12th birthday, I said, please, will you guys get me a drum kit? And my parents said, we'll get you a drum kit if you learn how to play the guitar. It was a negotiation.
Nice.
And I rolled my eyes and said, fine, I will concede. And I'm glad I did, because that was the greatest concession. Guitar is my main instrument now. It's the vehicle I use to write most of the Autumn Kings songs. And really, it was Guitar Hero that was the genesis of our whole musical career and why I'm here talking with you.
Well, I got to tell you something that you can probably relate to. Back in February, I was in Vegas at a radio record convention called #Happens.
Yep.
And there I met Jade Springart, who is the program director for The Riff in Detroit.
Love Jade, yeah.
She gave me this great conversation of how she worked herself from, literally the bottom all the way to that prestigious position as program director.
Yeah.
And she's killing it there. So tell me about, how the Riff, living that close to the border there, really was a major influence on you.
It was the biggest influence. All of my influences basically came from the Detroit rock stations and 101 The Riff. Even to this day, when the industry has changed so much, the Riff wields so much influence over the Midwest and especially the Metro Detroit area. So we grew up listening to AC/DC, the GNRs, Metallica, my favorite band of all time, Rise Against, and then even till today, now they're playing Autumn Kings. They're playing I Prevail. So I'm like honored that full circle we get to be aired on a station that I was listening to on the way to that AC/DC concert that you were talking about. And I love Jade. She's a great gal, and she grinded kind of. I really look at radio and music as parallel things where it's a both volatile businesses, and you've got to have really thick skin to survive. But I'm very grateful for the American influences growing up.
And I know, through the years how important Detroit radio, I mean, going back to the late 60s and 70s, I mean, it's always been major influential to the border there, especially. And being that close, LaSalle, Ontario, I think it is where you're originally from. Do you feel sometimes more American than Canadian just because of the music influence you get from this side of the border?
Yeah, I definitely do, because I always show fans after the shows and they ask where we're from. I'll pull up the Google Maps, and if you look at Canada, it's just a colossal country. And we grew up at the very, very bottom point of the country, just about the bottom of the country. And I actually did this, again, geeking out a couple of weeks ago. I think it's 12 or 15 states that I'm actually more south than where I grew up in LaSalle, which is so crazy. So yes, definitely was embedded in that American culture and American spirit from the time I was a young kid, even with sports games too, like going to see Wings games or Lions games. So I've definitely felt that. I'm a Red Wings fan, not a Maple Leafs fan. I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but for life.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Joe. Now, you guys met, I believe, at a Fresh Co. grocery it was.
Yes.
You called him Banana Boy because he worked in the produce section. I have read a little bit about you today.
You did your homework.
So, how do you guys go from grocery guys, bag guys, to produce guys to being the Autumn Kings, man?
It's just so surreal. So for your listeners, Fresh Co. is like Kroger or Aldi, that sort of equivalent in Canada.
Gotcha.
And Joe, he just oozes charisma, and he's the sort of guy, he's a great communicator with his verbal expressions. So you can sort of see from a mile away what he's thinking. It's just written on his forehead. Everyone who meets Joe knows that. And he was always a very friendly, warm guy. And we'd sort of exchange glances in a very platonic way, to be clear. And I was like, oh, this guy seems cool. And then we caught a break room together after a few months of me working at Freshco as the terrible employee that I was, and caught a break, started chit-chatting about music. I had a band in high school at the time that was doing things, but everyone was sort of on a different life trajectory. One guy was going to become an engineer, et cetera, et cetera. And Joe basically had nothing going on for himself. I had nothing going on for myself other than music. And we're like, hey, we should start a band sometime. But it's one of those half-hearted promises that you make, but you don't usually follow through on. Hey, we should jam sometime. It's like saying we should hang out sometime. Right. But anyway, a year later, I start university, hating every minute of it, music school, learning too much about theory. I want to do the commercial artist thing. I see on my Facebook one day a guy who's playing the ukulele and singing. I'm like, that guy sounds good. Took a closer look. I'm like, is that Joe from Freshco? So literally, no word of a lie, I went back to my closet, recharged my BlackBerry, because I had moved to iPhone between the year that I knew Joe and the year I started university, grabbed my BlackBerry, found his name, put it in my iPhone, texted him, yo, we should start a band sometime.
Wow.
You want to come over in a couple days? And I gave him 24 songs to learn to see if he was serious about doing it or not. And he learned all 24 songs within 2 days.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And originally I was supposed to actually be the only lead singer, and he was supposed to be the backup singer. And then he started singing 3 Days Grace. And I was like, can you do that just one more time to make sure my ears aren't deceiving me?
Yeah.
And he sang again. I think it was I Hate Everything About You. And I was like, you're going to be the lead singer, actually.
Wow.
And so now we kind of trade off, almost 50-50, maybe 60-40, Joe to me. But that is the story of how the band started. It's pretty wild. It's funny because you have the internet, right? And you think you could kind of connect on these websites. And I'm sure for some people that is how it works out. But for me, for whether it's dating or finding your wife or starting a band, I do prefer the more organic route, like through in-person meeting, where there's just a vetted trust, or you kind of have a mutual circle of friends. And so this was one of those very organic stories of how a band came together.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
We're here today in this club called Come and Take It Live in Austin, Texas, one of the few venues that actually made it through COVID. I mean, there's a lot of venues that really shut down here and, of course, all over the country. Bands threw in the towel. Maybe you guys even thought about it. But what was it that kept you being, persistent and said, man, we're not going to let this take us down. We got to keep moving forward.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting you say that. And that was a real thing. And that was a tough point in the band's career, because that was the first time we ever thought to ourselves, is this going to work out? Because up until that point, if we put in enough effort, we got the results that we were going for, and the band's career trajectory was on the up and up and up. And then COVID stripped that momentum, especially on the touring front. So we sat there going, okay, we can make music all day long, but without being there in person and winning people over one by one, it's very difficult to build a holistic career, the kind of career we dreamed of since we were 18 years old.
Right.
And so there was that thought, but it was just stubbornness. When I'd sit there and kind of getting in my head, I would think, well, what's my alternative? What do I want to do? I'm not going to go back and work a normal job or something like that. I'd rather die. I know it sounds dramatic, but there's more than air in my lungs. And so there's no intellect required. There's no Harvard education or Yale education that could teach you resilience and how to get through tough times. I think it was just that unconscious decision to be like, we're too stubborn to do anything else, and we're going to stick it out as long as it takes. But man, I will tell you, I'm an optimistic, upbeat guy like 99.9% of the time. During COVID, there were times where I was questioning myself. I'm like, man, this was really, really tough.
Yeah.
That was the toughest point in my life. And I say to Joe all the time, that period, I don't know if there's anything else that could happen in the band's career that will be more difficult than simply surviving through COVID.
Right.
Yes, touring is tiring. Yes, you got to deal with industry politics. Yes, other things come up that you got to work through with internal band issues or whatever a band has to go through, right? But I don't think anything's tougher than just sitting there in solitude for years. You know, in Canada, it was 2 years it was locked down, right? Thankfully, I was here, but a lot of the band was kind of locked up. We didn't have anything going on the live front, but we just stuck it out, and I'm very glad that we made it through and we're here now.
You know, many bands will say how their career kind of jumps from album to album. When I listen to Autumn Kings, I almost hear it single to single, and an example would be Sleep When I'm Dead going to Hellbound. I mean, it seems like you guys, it didn't take a full album. You literally had a major trajectory just from 2 songs. Am I on track with that?
Yeah, this is another one of those insane things. I'll tell a quick backstory that leads into that, which is, for 8.5 years, this band had no manager. So from 2015 until mid-2023, we had no real industry support. We had the fan support. The streaming numbers were great. We put on a great live show. We had our stuff together, but we didn't have the team that could sort of unlock those doors that we needed, especially in rock. You know, you think the internet just makes it easy to kind of get anything done. And yeah, you can have a viral TikTok, but you do need a team of champions kind of helping propel you to that next level. We didn't have that. And I sat there in January of 2023. This is a little inside baseball for how things actually work. You know, some artists can be like, oh man, I don't know how I do it. I'm like, I can't be that guy. And I was sitting there clanking away at my keys on my keyboard, trying to find a manager. So reaching out to people, blah, blah, blah. And I found this guy that I wanted to hit up. And I saw that I had hit him up back in June of 2015, and this was January of 2023.
Wow.
And I thought 2 things. I thought either I'm the stupidest individual to ever live, still sitting here, you know, the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Why am I still trying to do this? Why am I even in this industry? This is still right at the tail end of when COVID finished. And then I also thought, well, actually, maybe that resilience is admirable. Maybe there's something there that's exciting. And lo and behold, within those next couple months, we found our management till today.
Wow.
Not that particular guy, but we found our management. Management helped us a lot kind of with opening doors and meeting the right people, paired with the fact that our songwriting had just gotten better. I really believe in the science of taking 9, 10, 11 years to really hit your stride in whatever you do. And at that point, we had hit just about that mark with how long we've been writing. So I think Sleep When I'm Dead was, at that point, the strongest song we put out. We got very lucky. We weren't signed at the time. Octane took a chance on us, which really set the tone across America for radio. It was really our introduction to radio. And then the label started knocking, and then the lawyers wanted to talk. And I'm like, where were you guys 3 years ago? We're not that much better now than we were then, you know what I mean? But it was a strong song. And then that set the tone, like I said. And then Hellbound and our chops paired with the team, paired with everything. And it really takes, you know, if you look at bands like Shinedown or Skillet, none of those bands got big overnight.
Right.
It was really 10 years more or less where they were kind of under the radar, and then Second Chance comes out, and then Monster comes out. Like, wow, it's insane. So yeah, it was a long, hard road, and we're still grinding it out, but it's been a great 2 or 3 years.
Doing this show for over 25 years, I reflect back to those times with Shinedown and Skillet. And, you know, I was right there from the beginning. And then all of a sudden, like you said, it's like, oh, this overnight success, like that took 10 years kind of thing, you know? So it's cool when it happens, you know, finally, though.
Yeah, it really is.
I know you guys are not afraid to experiment a little bit with sound, and, you know, I'm probably going to go with the sitar and Hellbound on this. And I guess, you know, as you've been working on new stuff, are you still like trying to experiment with stuff, or do you know when you go, that might be a little bit too much?
Yeah, you know, it's a very interesting question. And I was just telling all the guys in the van the other day, I've been having this philosophical dilemma because we're working a lot with LA writers and producers who are uber talented. These are like the top 1% of music producers who have the ear and have the knack for what is a hit song, a song that pops and does really well. So we're going through this evolution right now where we had built our entire catalog from scratch. No A&R guy, no producer was telling us kind of what to do. We were just figuring it out on our own. Maybe our intuition wasn't perfectly refined at the beginning, but doing those reps without that outside influence is something that we're very proud of, and that's what got us the record deal and what got us the fans and the continued amazing streams. Now we're starting to hit that point where there are a lot of voices saying, sound like this, you guys got to hurry up and make your songs a little bit quicker, you're overthinking this, you're overthinking that.
Right.
And so it's very tough when the very thing that makes us unique and makes us stand out is our willingness to try wacky things, like try a sitar and tap into my Lebanese upbringing, even though it might seem unorthodox. And I'm very, very inspired by my guys in System of a Down. I say my guys, I've never met them yet. I'm sure I will soon.
But you relate.
I deeply relate because they're Armenian, I'm Lebanese, very similar culture. They were immigrants, they came to America, and they weren't so influenced by the top 40 and what was on the charts. And because of that, they didn't end up sounding like those new metal bands at the time, who are great bands. But when you think of System of a Down, they are inimitable. There will never be another System of a Down.
That's right.
Not even close, right? Because they just didn't, they just charted their own course. They stuck to their guns. And we're for the first time feeling that outside influence and feeling that pressure of conforming, but we're way too stubborn to do that. So we'll tell whoever's telling us to do that, they can go.
Right.
You can't, because the thing that got us here, we have to keep that magic thing. Yes, we can listen. Yes, we can try and experiment with different things. And I'm not against, mainstream songs or songs that work at radio. I'm not a purist that way. But the idea that now we're just going to become a radio band or something like a band that's just chasing hits, it's like you're going to lose the originality in the process. And I don't think that's good.
Two bands I had on the Rock 30 last year twice is Autumn Kings and also Hollywood Undead.
Yep.
You guys toured together since we last spoke. And I know you got kind of close with Charlie Scene. And you've talked about how Gone, Gone, Gone is one of the heaviest songs you ever written, and that kind of ties in with that tour and Charlie. So I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of the amazing ways a collaboration came together. We actually only had 3 nights we were doing with Hollywood Undead. And each night, Jordan, a.k.a. Charlie Scene, would say, you guys are really good. I love your music.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of those niceties, one of those platitudes that you tend to just exchange, to kind of build rapport with people. So I didn't read into it too much. I didn't know if you meant it from the bottom of his heart, but he kept saying it. And he's like, no, dude, you guys are sick. I want a shirt for my kid. I love you guys. Let's write together sometime. And I was like, Charlie Scene wants to write with us? Hell yeah, let's go. And it turns out we were looking to get that next single that was going to be worked to radio. And we had 2 days in between Boston and New York. So Joe and I flew out to Nashville, where he's based out of. And we put together this song, Gone, 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 which it was one of the healthiest collaborations we'd ever done. Jordan brought so much to the song. And that's not to knock on any of the other collaborators we've worked with, but Joe and I tend to lead the energy in the room and bring in a good bulk of the idea. This one, Jordan really brought it in, and we worked together. While we were on the road driving from Detroit to Denver, we had written half of the song and then put it together with the half that Jordan had sent to us originally and that we were cooking on. Anyway, it had all come together in the studio in Nashville over like 2 or 3 days and put this thing together. And it was an amalgamation of his influences and ours. You can hear a bit of Nirvana. He had actually written the song as an acoustic kind of Nirvana sounding thing when he was half in the bag after coming back from a Hollywood Undead tour. He showed me the original voice memo. I'm like, dude, this could have been like a Nirvana song.
Right.
And anyway, we took it with our Avenged and System influences, married all of that together and put together what I think is, unanimously from our circles of friends and even people in the business and fans for that matter, they think it's the best song we've ever put out. I'm like, wow, this is cool. And I happen to agree. And what's really special about it is it works as a mainstream song. Like melodically, you kind of remember it after one listen. And it also tickles that nerd itch that I have where if a guitarist was trying to learn it, it's not an easy song to learn.
Right.
So Autumn Kings tries to always balance those two things. One listen, hooky memorability with what skill? How did you play that? What is that? Is that like a harmonic minor scale? So we hit both of those points, and I think we really did that with Gone. And Jordan's great. We're going to be going back this summer to do some more writing with him. And who knows? There may or may not be a Hollywood Undead tour in the fall. We're yet to find out. We'll see.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, you're on tour with Melrose Avenue and having that support act role. You get a shorter set list, obviously. So, what do you have to do to make every song count? Because obviously there's going to be people that maybe seeing you for the first time tonight, and you're getting that one chance to make that great first impression.
Never an easy conversation figuring out which songs fit in a 35-minute set like this is.
Right.
And so what we tend to do, because we're rock heavy guys at heart, is just put all of the heaviest, highest energy songs. And we were just looking at our set list the other day, and we're like, boys, there are like 5 songs in a row where we don't have more than 3 seconds to breathe, and we're just song to song to song. But we're doing majority new songs because I really think the band's forged an identity and a thumbprint. I will say, I mean, I don't know if this sounds good or bad, but I think it's taken us about 9 years to find out the kind of band that we are musically.
Right.
And I think we've really hit that point now with the Sleeps, the Hellbounds. We're playing an unreleased song on this tour called Become Numb, which is going over very well the first 2 shows that we did. And so it's mostly new stuff, which happens to be heavier stuff, and just trying to keep the vocal cords hydrated and take lots of lozenges. That's my drug of choice on tour.
It's kind of interesting to hear you say how, it's almost taking you 9 years to kind of feel like you know where you're at and how you need to write and how you need to tour. And sometimes people, with the way the music industry is always slinging stuff at you, you can get jaded. What has it taken for you and Joe to really just kind of put that noise away and keep moving, the way you're going?
Yeah, not easy. And I'd say I think it's easier when you have a band versus being a solo artist.
Right.
Because when you're a solo artist, yes, you've got guys in your band. Yes, you might end up building a good camaraderie. But if they're all just paid to be there, it's kind of a different story. Where with Joe and I, we've built something as a brotherhood where, we went 8 years without making any sort of significant income. Like, we were just taking every penny, reinvesting it back into the band. And to a large degree, we still do that today. And so if it were about the money, we would have gone into something else. So having each other to keep ourselves sane is huge. And I don't think that solo artists get that same luxury that we do. When you can climb a mountain with a buddy, it makes it so much easier. And it's love of music. It's love of the game. And whenever I feel, I don't want to say jaded because I'm not a jaded guy, but whenever I feel down on my luck, like, why aren't things moving the way that I want them to move? I will just listen. It's no therapy. I don't need to take mushrooms. I just listen back to the stuff that made me fall in love with music when I was 15 years old. I'll listen to the Nickelbacks. I'll listen to Battery by Metallica.
Right.
I'll pop on some Pantera, and I'm not just saying that because we're in Texas. And I will be reinvigorated that way. Sometimes it'll be like an emotional experience. As funny as that might sound, I'll just sit there and I'll shed a couple tears. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, because of these bands, my life looks so different than the life my immigrant father had initially envisioned for me, which would have been a doctor, a lawyer, engineer path. These bands, that sound, when in 2011, 2012, when I knew I was going to do music the rest of my life, changed the arc of my life. And that is what gets me to keep going, that more than anything else.
Well, fortunately, you do have Joe by your side and a great team working with you as well, and things are going great right now. But look, we're going to have challenges that are continue to come as long as you're doing the band, man. So what is it going to take for you and Joe and the team to kind of get through these challenges just for 2026?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a couple practical things. The first is, not too much caffeine on the road.
Right.
Then, for me, I'm already high strung without caffeine. If I throw coffee on top of it, I overthink everything to its minute elegance, right? So I gotta watch that. Lifestyle habits gotta stay good. And then just faith, faith in God for me is a huge thing. I just got married a couple months ago, maybe 6 or 7 months ago now, to a wonderful lady, my wife Delaney. And so trying to keep those home habits grounded and solid and keep those plants watered even when you're on the road helps to provide for a nice balance. And thankfully, there isn't really much ego in the band. There's no ego in the band. And so everyone gets along, and it's actually fun. Like, I enjoy being on the road. And when things come up, I've just learned, this is getting really deep in the philosophical woods for a second, but this idea that you should be pursuing your own happiness, I kind of just gave up on that idea. I thought, being happy, I don't know if I can swear on this thing.
Sure.
No, just do the work, even when you don't feel like doing the work. And when you're a rock band, you got to do it. And me, this is funny. I moved to America. I love it here. I will just listen to stories of the people who sailed the ocean, the people who did stuff that was 10 times harder. They didn't have a Buc-ee's 10 minutes from their hotel. What? They had to hunt down seal and eat freaking seal meat just to survive. So I think of that and I'm like, what do I have to complain about? I'm not a martyr. And this is a thing I tell a lot of people when I do interviews is I think there's a tendency for some artists to glamorize, how tough it is and fetishize. Like, I am a sort of martyr and I'm sacrificing parts of my life to be here on stage to share music. And I'm like, bro, no, I got to go to Singapore and play for the military. We got to go tour 10 countries in Europe for amazing fans. What do you mean? This is the dream. I chose to be here. I can leave anytime I want to, and somebody else is going to want to do this. So I just try to, gratitude, as basic as that is, just a bit of gratitude,
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, especially where you're going to be playing tonight at Come and Take It Live here in Austin, Texas. And I'll be here to see you for the first time. Thanks again for a great interview, man, and best of luck this year.
Thank you so much. I hope we don't let you down.